All right, I believe we are live. Welcome in, everybody. It is great to be back for, I believe, year 4 of the Flurry Sports Start Sit Show. We did not get a show out on week 1. We apologize for that, but here we are for week 2. We'll be with you through the end of the season. I am Jake Senholes. You can find me at Senholes on Sport. Joining me is first time on the stream. Is this your first time on any Flurry stream, Zach?
Yes, it is. Good.
All
Glad
right.
to be
Well,
here.
welcome.
Good to be here.
Welcome to the team. He's a new writer and I know a big fantasy fan. So we're happy to have you here. Obviously a fan of the Cleveland Browns. But yeah, definitely happy to have you here. For those of you who are used to seeing me coach and Henry, or just coach and Henry for the latter part of last season, they just simply got a lot going on right now. I think they're going to join the stream again full-time here in a few weeks. Definitely Coach will be back, and then we'll see what happens with Henry. But yeah, Zach and I are going to at least carry you here through this episode and probably the weeks to come. Want to let you know about one of our great sponsors, our great partners over at Prize Picks. I'm sure lots of you, especially if you're a Twitter user, have seen advertisements for Prize Picks. They're all over the place. They got some good sponsor partners other than us. But we have a special offer for you if you're a first-time user of Prize Picks. We're gonna and you use the code Flurry, all in caps, FLURRY. We're gonna give you a deposit match all the way up to $1,000. So if you go to the Prize Picks homepage, you'll see that they just offer a general deposit match up to $100. If you use the code Flurry, it's up to $1,000. So those of you out there are into or maybe in a state where you can't legally gamble on sports with the legal books, Prize Picks is available in 35, I believe. Let me look here. 30 states, including the Washington, D.C. and Canada. Pretty much wherever you are in the country, other than some northwestern states and then some eastern states, you can use Prize Picks and win a bunch of money. Pretty simple. All you have to do is either pick over or under on pass yards, pass touchdowns, receiving yards, rushing yards. You can parlay a bunch of quarterbacks together, let's say, to hit their number, go over their numbers or under their numbers. You can pick a bunch of people to score a touchdown or not. Tons of different ways. And it's not just NFL. It's all sorts of different sports. So tons of different ways to make money and make the most out of your $1,000 deposit match, or up to $1,000 over at Prize Picks. We want to thank them for sponsoring us tonight and being one of our great partners. So those of you who have watched the show in the past, you know that we base the show a lot off of listener and fan interaction. So if you've got, obviously, fantasy football, there's a lot of decisions to be made, right? We know that, Zach. A lot of times you got 3 open spots, you got 4 players to kind of decide between. So that's kind of what we're here to try and help you out with. So feel free to throw any of those questions in the chat. We're monitoring the chat, and we will get to them immediately as soon as they pop up. But right now, while we're waiting for some viewers and waiting for the chat, we just got our first one. It's a defensive question. Interesting. So we will get to that in just a second, and then dive full speed ahead into the rest of the stream here. So just to lay out the format right before we get started, usually just go through every single position group: running back, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, and then we intermittently answer those questions. So Zach, without any further ado, let's hop right into it. All in One Show wants to know Denver Steelers or Eagles defense. So obviously that's a decision he's got to make within the next hour and 20 minutes here. So Zach, any initial thoughts on those defenses? I got to look into opponents here, but for me, I think the Steelers defense is going to show up to play tonight. That the over/under, if you're a bettor, the total is only at 38, one of the lowest NFL totals in a long time. And of course, these divisional rivalry games, usually pretty low scoring. Cleveland's coming off that embarrassing loss, that letdown where they scored 30-something points. You're the Cleveland fan, the Cleveland expert here, but I think that this is going to be one of those AFC North rough and tumble games. Might end up like 17-14 final score, something like that.
Mike Tomlin still owns the Browns franchise. He's the head coach of the Steelers, but he still owns the Browns. I don't care if TJ Watt is out. He knows Cleveland. It doesn't matter who's on Cleveland's team, but let's be real. Jacoby Brissett still is a question mark. Amari Cooper looks like he's going to be boomer bust value. It's a short week. They're missing Jadeveon Clowney as well as Chase Winovich at the DN position for tonight's game. I'm going to take the Steelers over the Browns 9 times out of 10, especially on a short week. Steelers.
So when you're comparing the Steelers D to these other two defenses, Denver and the Eagles, both top 10 defenses right now, of course, just through 2 weeks. But Denver plays San Francisco. Now Jimmy G back in the fold. As soon as he stepped in, that offense just took off, right? Those players are used to Jimmy G. They know what's successful with him. I kind of would maybe shy away from Denver. I think the Denver offense is maybe going to have a chance to do something this week. But I think for me, it's between the Steelers and the Eagles. Tough decision, though, because the Eagles going into Washington to face Carson Wentz and a Commanders team that just does not look that great right now. So another favorable matchup for a defense that has put up 7 and 8 points the last 2 weeks, but I'm looking at Broncos here. The Eagles had a pretty big performance last week, but based on their opponents, Steelers going against the Browns, like you said, Jacoby Brissett probably primed for a letdown. He had 2 pretty decent weeks, and we know who he is. So between the Steelers and the Eagles, based on their opponents, which would you feel more comfortable with?
Carson Wentz and the Commanders' offense have been playing a lot of catch-up lately, and it's been pretty spectacular if you are high on the Carson Wentz train or your Commanders train, to the 2 people that are out there in the audience that are Commanders fans. But I'm still going to take the Steelers. If Carson Wentz comes back and they make that explosive game, I think there's a better chance that the Steelers shut out the Browns than the Eagles shutting out the Commanders.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I also think that Philly has the ability to score points at a much, much higher rate, right? So they don't have to be as solid defensively. We saw it against the Lions in week 1. They won 38-35. Who would have thought they would give up 35 points to the Lions? I really just think that I think tonight's going to be a race to 20 and maybe not even that. So just based on the lack of points alone and the fact that the Browns are coming off that crazy loss, now you're on a short week. You got Jacoby Brissett under center. I really like the Steelers, even without TJ Watt, as you alluded to.
Mm-hmm. It's a safer pick, Steelers defense. It's not a bad choice for the Eagles defense. Safer pick, Steelers defense.
I agree. So there we go. That is question 1 in the books. We got them piled up here, so we'll just keep rifling through them. Our second question, Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman, Gabe Davis, or Amari Cooper. How did you get in here? Where'd you come from? I didn't even send you an invite. How'd you get in here?
Me and we didn't do Lombardi sweep last night, so me and Trevor were going to do it, so I have the login. But obviously you guys are on, so we can't do it.
I see. Well, welcome. This is Luke Reimer, everybody, one of the 3, or I guess I should say 4 hosts of Lombardi Sweep. And Zach and Luke, I guess, are going to be with us the rest of the way. So, Luke, perfect timing. We already do you agree? I don't know if you heard or not. Steelers defense over Eagles defense. Zach and I both kind of agreed. We like the Steelers tonight in just a rough and tumble, real low scoring game versus an Eagles defense who can afford to give up points because they can score so many.
Yeah, it feels like this game should be classic AFC North, right? I know it's not cold yet, but this feels like a lot of guys running full speed into each other. And plus, the I guess other than the running backs on both teams, do any of these skill players speak to you guys at all? Because I don't really think I'm scared of anyone really on either of these teams for receiving or a passing option.
Yeah, have you seen the tweet from? Or I don't think it was a tweet, but George Pickens.
Yeah,
he's publicly already criticizing the offensive coaches in Pittsburgh, saying that he wants the ball. Amari Cooper still has Jacoby Brissett. I don't see any pass catchers making a difference in tonight's game. I think it's like you said, people running full speed into each other on the ground.
Yep. Just to speak on the Eagles defense too, real quick. I believe it's a revenge game for Carson Wentz, isn't it?
A bit of a revenge game, I would say. Yeah. Obviously he had that quick stop as a Colt, but it's just obviously it's two divisions that can play hard-nosed football. I just think the Eagles, because their offense is so prolific, their defense doesn't have to be as good, where the Steelers on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, the defense has to step up and play in order to keep the offense and the team in the game. So I think we're across the board Steelers here, but that leads perfectly into the next question. He needs 2 out of these 4. Deontay Johnson, Michael Pittman, Gabe Davis, and Amari Cooper. I'm going to say right off the bat, we're going to get to him eventually, but Matt Ryan, since week 8 last year, has been one of the worst, if not the worst, fantasy football quarterbacks in the league, personally. But he did show some flashes. Michael Pittman had a decent week 1. Then, of course, he was hurt last week. I'm saying the Colts bounce back this week. Ryan tries to really push the ball downfield, and Michael Pittman is going to be a beneficiary of that. So me personally, I'm definitely starting Michael Pittman, but then that comes down to Deontay Johnson, Gabe Davis, Amari Cooper. Out of those 3, Luke, I guess we'll toss it to you. Who stands out of those 3 just immediately?
Can you say the 3 again? I don't have the chat up.
I picked Michael Pittman, but then we got Deontay Johnson, we got Gabe Davis, and Amari Cooper.
I think I love. I'm sorry, Jake. Can you tell me who you said first again?
Deontay Johnson. So he plays tonight, as does Amari Cooper.
Yep. I think I love Michael Pittman out of those 4 that you had mentioned, and I think I like Gabe Davis too. If I needed to pick one out of the 3, I mean, the Buffalo Bills are rolling right now. They probably are the best team in football. And I don't think that the Dolphins do have a great secondary, but we saw Lamar Jackson put up 38 points on that defense last week. I don't know why Josh Allen can't put up 40 on this defense. And I would imagine that includes, Gabriel Davis, of course, is going to be involved in that. So I think just alone, I think I'm mostly going to lead towards Gabe Davis, just for the thought that he's on the better team. He's on the higher powered offense. And hey, maybe we get another Miami shootout again.
And Gabe Davis has already had a multi-touchdown game this year, I believe. 50% of the multi-touchdown game. Zach, does Amari Cooper seem to you kind of a safety blanket for Jacoby Brissett right now? He had a heck of a week last week.
It's like I said earlier. I think Amari Cooper, what we've seen in the past 2 weeks, is going to be Amari Cooper's season, at least until Deshaun Watson possibly shows up. And even then, I don't even know what chemistry they have. They didn't get a lot of time at camp together. Deshaun only plays 1 week. They're going up against each other. It is not the crucible of the NFL regular season. I think Amari Cooper is boom or bust. But to answer the question in pick 2, I'm going to take Michael Pittman and Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis, even though he was out last week, everybody expected Dawson Knox to go off the rails, right? They signed him to this contract. It's a high-powered offense. And even without Gabriel Davis, Dawson Knox still didn't get anything in returns. Gabe Davis returns to the lineup. He's going to get the ball.
And Dawson Knox is somebody that I had jotted down that we have to talk about as well. Through 2 weeks, he's only and again, this is a little bit of a left turn, but we talk about all the players that come up as they come up. He's 25th through 2 games this season. But if you look back all the way to last season, he has not had hardly any double-digit games at all. He was a beast at the beginning of the season, which I think is really where all of his value came from and the reason that he signed that massive contract. But let's go all the way back to week 13 last season. I'll run down his scores real quick. 1.4, 12, which is okay. 3.8, 7.1, 5.3, and then he had single-digit performances this week as well. So that's 9 out of the last 10 games that he's played that he hasn't been able to break into double digits. So Dawson Knox, a big name, not a big performer in the last half a season or so of football he's played.
Right. The thing about Dawson Knox too, right, is everyone's looking for that tight end in fantasy football, right? Because that's kind of the differentiator. There's only about 2, 3, 4 good tight ends in fantasy football. I don't necessarily know that Dawson Knox holds any more value than someone like a Logan Thomas or a Robert Tonyan, for instance. There's just way too many players on that Bills offense. And I know I just talked good about Gabe Davis on that offense, but it almost feels like Dawson Knox at times is the 5th or maybe even 6th option. And where does all of his value come from? It comes from the red zone. And I think I've said this many times on our ranking show, but Josh Allen, every time he gets to the red zone, he just puts on his best Cam Newton performance and runs that bitch right into the end zone.
Well, so the Bills don't even spend much time in the red zone because he's hitting Stephon Diggs from 55 yards out,
Yeah,
so it's like
right. At this point, I don't think there's I think there's minimal to no value in having Dawson Knox on your team right now. I'm not saying drop him or anything because he is going to get on the field. He is going to see snaps. But I don't necessarily know that, like Dawson Knox, you should be excited that he's going to win you your season or anything. Kind of what going back to what Jake said, based off of last year, we kind of saw him start hot and then kind of taper off. That taper off is still happening, and I don't see it going away anytime soon.
Yeah, so just to kind of wrap up this question, I think, is there any love for Deontay Johnson, or we bypassing him tonight?
I don't think so. I mean, of course he's going to be on the field. He gets 800 million targets a game, but nothing happens with those targets. And whether that's quarterback play or other weapons or just Pittsburgh not being as good as maybe people thought that they were going to be through 2 weeks. So I'm not high on Deontay Johnson. I think he'll see snaps. He will see targets. But what does he do with those targets? Who really knows?
I think Deontay Johnson, I look him as a valuable stash player for the back half of the season and potentially through your playoff run. If Kenny Pickett comes in at some point in the next couple of weeks, they can form some chemistry. I think those receivers are going to benefit more from Kenny Pickett whenever he does see the field. But I think consensus here tonight, Michael Pittman and Gabe Davis, if something is really drawing you into Amari Cooper, like I recommended to my girlfriend last week that she sit Amari Cooper in favor of Darnell Henderson. And it didn't work out very well in the flex spot. But I don't think Amari Cooper's going for 32 weeks in a row, especially in the game like tonight. But if your gut really says so, or otherwise, I think Michael Pittman and Gabe Davis, the consensus here. Just to
add on to this game tonight, and maybe, Zach, you can talk on it a little bit because Browns fan, I assume?
I wonder what gave it away.
But I mean, how much trust do Amari Cooper owners have in Jacoby Brissett? I mean, Jacoby Brissett's not a terrible quarterback by any means, but I don't see him, consistently getting Amari Cooper 25 to 30 point games, right?
Well, and like I mentioned to Zach, he had one of the better games of his career like 5 days ago. Now he's coming off a very short rest, and you can't expect that performance again.
Well, I think you said it best, the expectations of Jacoby Brissett, but I'll even take it back further, and I'll say it's the expectations of Kevin Stefanski and the coaching system. Last year, Baker Mayfield, the Browns are coming off of this playoff franchise historic season, and Baker Mayfield gets injured, and they just signed Nick Chubb in the off season prior to last year, and they're throwing the ball 50 times a game. Yeah. You know that the O-line is banged up. You know that Baker's banged up, and yet you still choose to throw the ball 50 times a game when you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in the backfield. And this year, it looks like he finally learned his mistake, and he is reverting back to Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. You have Jacoby Brissett. You have them two in the backfield. I don't know why you're going to throw it 50 times a game when you can rely on those two. Yeah, I think it's going to be touchdown or bust for Amari Cooper. And I don't think he's going to be putting up, 20 touchdowns a game. So it's not worth it.
All right. So we move on to James Martin. He's been waiting for a few minutes to get his question answered. To me, I don't know about you guys, this is an automatic no-brainer yes. If someone's going to accept that trade, take it. Anytime you can get your hands on Josh Allen, especially in a dynasty league, yeah. So here's the question. Thoughts on trading Justin Jefferson and a 2023 pick? I don't even care if it's the first overall, like your first-round pick in 2023, for Josh Allen in a Superflex league. I mean, Josh Allen has years and years and years and years of competitive top of the league type football in him, in my opinion. I think he's going to be healthier than Cam Newton. I think he's got way better arm talent than Cam Newton. I think there's just a lot to love about Josh Allen for the very long foreseeable future. Of course, Justin Jefferson, he's been great for the last couple of years, but what happens after Kirk Cousins? Does he end up in no man's land? Where does he go after the Vikings? There's a ton of questions surrounding the longevity of Justin Jefferson compared to Josh Allen, at least in my mind. Zach, if you have a chance to trade for Josh Allen, you're making this trade, right?
I'd give up Justin Jefferson. I'd give up that pick, and I'd throw in a thank you card as well.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a no-brainer to me. For Dynasty, right? I mean,
Yep,
what better quarterback can you have in Dynasty League right now than Josh Allen? I mean, you throw the names Patrick Mahomes or maybe a Lamar Jackson around, but Josh Allen's the guy you want. And depending on how long your Dynasty League goes, you're going to be starting Josh Allen every single week for the next 10 to 15 years if you make this trade.
Yeah, quite literally. And, like I said, Justin Jefferson's great, but receivers, position players in general, they climb till they don't anymore. They eventually hit their peak and start to decline. And I just don't see that on the horizon at all for Josh Allen for many, many years to come. If you can get him for Justin Jefferson in a pick, you have to make that trade. And then, like Luke said, for the next 15 years, you can laugh in that guy's face with the fact that, barring injury, you're starting one guy for the next 10 years. And that also in Dynasty, roster spots are important, right? A lot of guys carry 3-4 quarterbacks. If you can trade for Josh Allen, you only need one guy for backup just in case of injury or that one bye week opens up a couple of roster spots. That's a trade you got to make.
100% agree.
All right, easy enough. Don't need to spend too much time on that one. Just a little betting info here from our friend DeAndre Swift's season. He says he noticed that Mitch Trubisky has 100% of the public on over a half interception tonight. 100% of the public betting on one side on the over. That means the under's that's got to be a pretty decent payout, I would think.
Yes, I would agree, but I think I like the over.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough to, especially when Trubisky interception could happen in the first 2 drives. Kind of tough to have the under in that one.
The thing is too about that is, and Zach, maybe you can speak on this a little bit more than I can, but I mean, Myles Garrett is a top 10 player in football. He is a game wrecker by himself. If he can make Trubisky run a little bit, I think that we may see 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 ducks up in the air tonight. And I really love the Pittsburgh defense and love Mitch Trubisky to throw an interception this week.
Oh yeah, it's going to be gritty. Don't get your popcorn out and expect a show. It's going to be gritty.
So we got a real interesting one here. 3 guys up for the flex position: T. Higgins, Michael Thomas, or Gabe Davis. Now we've already talked quite a bit on Gabe Davis. We know, Luke's in love with him right now, and there's no reason not to be. Michael Thomas has come on strong. Jameis has looked disappointing relative to what I was hoping for this season. And then T. Higgins, Joe Burrow has been sacked. I'm sure you guys have heard this stat, but since coming back from his injury, he's been sacked twice as many times as the next most sacked quarterback. It's 81-42 or something like that. Something is different this year in Cincinnati. Last year, they had a horrible offensive line. They didn't care. Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow were like, we're going to throw the ball down the field anyway. We're going to find a way to find T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Just has not gone that way through the first 2 weeks. I think if anybody gets the looks first, if they can figure things out, the ball's obviously going to go Chase's way first. But I love T. Higgins. I always have loved T. Higgins. He had 6 touchdowns over 1,000 yards last year. But is Cincinnati at a point right now that you can trust T. Higgins over a guy like Michael Thomas or Gabe Davis?
I think so, right? Because, Zach, you're shaking your head, but I'll give you my thoughts here. I think that you can trust T. Higgins. A little spoiler, Cincinnati is my survivor pick this week. I think they come out and absolutely just fucking destroy the Jets. The Jets are coming off an emotional win. I think this is all Joe Burrow. This might be a 500-yard game, 5-touchdown performance from Joe Burrow.
They're only favored by 6 too.
It's
you can
wild.
get the Bengals -6.
It's wild. But anyways, I think Jamar Chase has to be involved because he only got 5 receptions in last week in that loss. So I think once Jamar Chase gets going, I think we may even see a play-action 75-yard touchdown right off the bat for Cincinnati. I think once that gets opened up, T. Higgins only benefits from that. And I would imagine that happens quicker than sooner in this game. So I think just volume alone, I don't necessarily know that T. Higgins is going to have 10 receptions for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns or anything like that. But I don't know how much more. I guess I don't know what the difference is between T. Higgins and Michael Thomas this week, and that makes me lead Higgins much more just because I love that Cincinnati matchup this week. This is a get right game for Cincinnati. If you're a Jets fan, I'm sorry, but you may lose by 40 this week.
Which is what I thought Cincinnati was going to do to Dallas last week. But despite their overall performance, T. Higgins did put up 19 points. Zach, play devil's advocate a little bit. Tell us why you don't like T. Higgins, but then also, is it Thomas or Davis for you then?
I'm going to go Michael Thomas. Slant King, it's still a safe route. It's still proven. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Jameis Winston is going to throw the ball. That might mean he throws more interceptions, but Michael Thomas is still guaranteed to get the ball. Gabe Davis is, talking about Amari Cooper with that touchdown or bust. Gabe Davis is going to get targets. He doesn't need to get all these touchdowns to get points. He is going to get the receptions in PPR leagues. You can't beat that. With T. Higgins, it's not necessarily that I don't trust T. Higgins. It's just that the offensive line right now is so horrid in Cincinnati. I just have to see it to believe it. So until that changes, I'm going to go with Michael Thomas or Gabe Davis.
My gut tells me to ride Michael Thomas. I mean, he came back after missing a whole year and has put up over 40 points in the first 2 weeks. Just the thing that makes me hesitant is they're playing Carolina, and no matter who plays Carolina, the game just seems to end 19-16 like we just saw, or 21-15, or like Carolina just doesn't breed points, which kind of makes me nervous. But it's hard to go away from a guy like Michael Thomas given what he's done the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're fine either way between Higgins and Thomas. Like I said, I don't know that there's that much of a disparity between them. But I think just to rehash what I said, I think if we see one get a bit better game than the other, I like the odds better on T. Higgins than Michael Thomas.
Well, and also if you're looking at it from a quarterback standpoint, who's more likely to throw for 405 touchdowns in a game? It's probably Joe Burrow at this point, especially given the fact that he's been so stifled. If you let him get loose, if the offensive line can figure it out for a game, I mean, they can be dangerous. But at the same time, Michael Thomas has done it the last 2 weeks in a row. So I think it's down to those two for us, despite the love we gave Gabe Davis off the top. So kind of maybe follow your gut as to what you like, who you like between Higgins and Thomas.
Not to hijack your guys' stream here or anything, or to delay the show, but just another point to add to that is the Saints, like Alvin Kamara is a limited participant in practice today. If he's on the field, he has to get the ball in order for this offense to work, in order for the Saints to be a good football team. So I would imagine if Alvin Kamara plays this week, I would imagine that Alvin Kamara touches the ball at least 20 to 30 times. I don't know how much of that is taken away from Michael Thomas, but I think that T. Higgins has kind of learned to play with the touches that he gets. And I don't know if Michael Thomas is necessarily in that ballpark yet.
Alvin Kamara, 12 touches for 4.6 points in week 1. All right. Moving on. Deontay Johnson tonight, or Michael Thomas / Christian Kirk on Sunday. Again, I'm rolling Michael Thomas. We keep hammering it. I don't think tonight's going to be an offensive show. I said it's a race to 20, probably 6 field goals kicked in this game if I was to guess.
Yep.
So there's a little bet for you. The over 2.5 field goals, probably at least even money, maybe plus 110. Hammer that over 2.5 field goals.
If we're being real, Jake, every Thursday night game you should hammer the over 2.5 field goals.
Yeah, especially early in the season before the books are able to, once they start taking a ton of losses on it, then they'll move those lines, and it's like all of a sudden it's minus 140 to get the over 2.5. I don't know what it is now, but in week 3, it's probably pretty good value. So Deontay Johnson, I think we are just kind of steering away from him, not only in this game, but until, like you said, if you're in a PPR, he can float because of the targets. But if you're in a standard league, I'm especially not starting Deontay Johnson tonight. So Michael Thomas or Christian Kirk. We haven't talked about Christian Kirk yet. We already have shared our thoughts about Michael Thomas. Are either one of you starting Christian Kirk instead?
I mean, I'll give you the argument to start Christian Kirk. I guess on our show last night, I guaranteed that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to win that division and make the playoffs. I don't know necessarily if that's going to work out for me or not, But Christian Kirk, whether you like it or not, he is a good football player. He's involved in this offense. He's the number one receiver in a Doug Peterson offense, which is a very good spot to have that I think is going by the wayside in the fantasy football community right now. Trevor Lawrence has looked, I know he's only one season, but these last two games, I think are the two, that's the best he's looked in his career so far. I think there's a little revitalization with Doug Peterson there. The only worry for Christian Kirk this week, right, is that Chargers matchup. You have to imagine J.C. Jackson are probably shadowing him a little bit if he's playing. I think he might be hurt. But anyways, Christian Kirk has seen double-digit targets these last 2 weeks. He's the number one guy he's the number one guy Trevor Lawrence looks to. If he looks not there, he's looking to Zay Jones. If not there, Trevor Lawrence is throwing the ball away. I think every first look that Trevor Lawrence has is Christian Kirk, and I think that's really helped for people who, like me, who took a risk on Christian Kirk and are now kind of reaping the benefits of it. I guess, Christian Kirk and Michael Thomas, they're kind of both in that same T. Higgins, all in that same kind of category for me. I guess just on matchup alone, I take Michael Thomas. But, I don't expect Christian Kirk to put up a stinker or anything this week.
Well, they are traveling all the way out west and, playing a Chargers team that needs a big win. Everybody hyping up the Chargers. We know Justin Herbert is great. They haven't had a signature win yet this season. I do think, especially like you alluded to with the Jets earlier, coming off that emotional win, shutting out the Colts, yeah, it's something they've become accustomed to, but that's a huge win for Jacksonville. Then they got to fly all the way out to California, and, I think they could get stomped as well. And that's another game that the Chargers are only favored by 7. I also love that. I think Jacksonville's a good football team. I don't like them in this spot this week. Does that affect Christian Kirk enough? I leave that up to you. But real quickly, Zach, because we got some other stuff to move on to, Michael Thomas or Christian Kirk?
Christian Kirk. Everybody laughed because Jacksonville paid him as much as they did, but through 2 weeks, he's proving to get his money's worth.
All right, there you have it, Christian Kirk from the boys. This next question is interesting to me. Off the top, I would just say, don't mess with your team at all, dude. It sounds like you should be able to walk to your championship. He says his team is Lamar, which doesn't matter, but it's Nick Chubb, Aaron Jones, and Antonio Gibson with Kupp and Waddle as his wide receivers. I don't know if he's playing in a 6-man league or what, but that is the most insane team I've ever heard. But he's wondering if he should trade Aaron Jones or Gibson for the likes of Joe Mixon, Miles Sanders, Deontay Johnson, or Amari Cooper. I would say absolutely not. None of those names are very intriguing to me, except for maybe Amari Cooper once Deshaun Watson comes back. But you've already got Jalen Waddle and Cooper Kupp, and I think Aaron Jones is going to be a massive. This could be his best fantasy year ever. The Packers need him to be incredible, especially the wide receiver group, and Aaron Rodgers is figuring everything out with them. I love Aaron Jones this season. Gibson has already scored more points combined in 2 weeks than he did on for the last 8 weeks last season. I like that team how it is. I think, I don't know, this is another maybe no-brainer for me, but when you got a team that good, I wouldn't mess with it, especially after 2 weeks.
Yeah, Jake, I agree with you. This guy has an awesome team. I don't know if you guys were listening to our show last night, but I think someone had a team where it was Josh Allen, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Cooper Kupp, and Jalen Waddle or something. And I asked Zach and Trevor, how do these people get these fucking good teams? I wish I could be in one of these leagues. But anyways, Aaron Jones is a guy in Green Bay. After the Chicago game, Rodgers in his press conference said that's what you saw on Sunday night. That's what the offense is going to be this year. There's going to be probably 8 guys getting 3 receptions, and the majority of the fantasy points, I would guess, are made up through Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Me liking Aaron Jones a little bit more because he scores the touchdowns. So I don't think you should trade Aaron Jones whatsoever. Antonio Gibson, I think you're fine trading. I think right now is a sell high on him before Brian Robinson gets back.
That's the one guy. Yeah, that's the one guy that maybe you can wheel and deal for. And Zach, I know this is your area of expertise. Out of those guys that he listed, who maybe would you try and target? Are you looking to replace that running back with Miles Sanders, or are you going after or Joe Mixon? Or are you going after a wide receiver? He's already got Kupp and Waddle, but
if you're going to trade for Amari Cooper, realistically, you may not get that bank, or you may not receive the bank on your investment till week 12 when Deshaun Watson comes back, and even then, we simply don't know. Like Luke said, Gibson's going to be his highest selling point right now, and you're just going to stash Amari Cooper, or you could ride Gibson right now in your flex until later on to try to trade. But safer pick, keep Gibson now. Keep him in your lineup. Flex, safe pick.
And he did come back and say he's a little bit worried about A.J. Dillon increasing his role and whatever. I think A.J. Dillon's in the exact role he's going to be in. I think they use him perfectly. I definitely don't think he's going to harm Aaron Jones this year any more than he did last year. Aaron Jones is the one that's able to break off these massive chunk yard plays. And he's the guy, like you said. I mean, A.J. Dillon plays his role perfectly, but he is the guy, especially when there's no go-to receiver yet.
Aaron Jones is the best player in this offense, and he needs to be, you want him on your team. Unless you can get something incredible for Aaron Jones, I don't think you want to look at trading him.
All right. A couple more questions here, which thank you guys for the interaction. I didn't know with this being the first stream if we'd get a couple questions or a ton. We haven't even done one of my notes yet. We just started from the top with the questions.
I still got all mine.
Do appreciate it. So keep them coming if you want. We'll kind of try and rip through these so we can maybe get to some of that other stuff quick because we're going to get off air before the game, but we still got about 45 minutes to work with. So anyway, Chubb, Robinson, or Harris. So a couple of a decision to make tonight, unless you're going with Robinson.
Jake, I think you missed one.
What's that?
Deontay Johnson or Drake London. You missed that one.
Deontay Johnson or Drake London? I don't know. I like Drake London. I think that might be some. So I think that might be some game between you get two really bad teams together, open the field up. I don't know. I think he might be able to do something against the Seahawks. But Deontay Johnson, if anybody scores tonight, might be him.
I think I'm on the opposite of you, Jake, on that one. I think this is a big Cordero Patterson, Kyle Pitts receiving game. We know that Seattle likes to play that soft, deep zone. I mean, and Marcus Mariota is going to take underneath routes if they're open. I don't necessarily see him hitting post routes or hitting deep routes or anything like that to Drake London on Sunday. I love Kyle Pitts this week. I love Cordero Patterson, and I don't think I love much else from Atlanta.
Let me say, it's tough to love Kyle Pitts in any week against any team. I mean, this guy's been one of the most disappointing fantasy football players. He has one career touchdown in 19 career games, and I wrote this in one of my articles, his ADP articles. But last year he finished as tight end 6, but he was closer to tight end 13 than he was tight end 3.
Right.
His production is just so limited because he cannot find the end zone. He has 2 targets for 19 yards, the exact same stat line in week 1 and week 2 this year. I think it's on the coaching staff right now and Marcus Mariota. You take that guy 4th overall, you got to get him the ball. 4 targets in 2 weeks is criminal.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts probably shouldn't have been drafted as high as he was.
Probably not. So,
sorry,
Zach. Do you have any thoughts on that question there? London versus Johnson.
I'm a fan of Marcus Mariota. I'm going to take Drake London 10 times out of 10. I don't necessarily trust Seattle's defense. They came out and they played really inspired week 1 against Denver. Don't know if I trust them in the long run. They drafted Drake London to be the new face of the franchise on offense. I'll take that bet over Seattle.
So back to the question on hand here about either Chubb or Harris tonight. I think both those guys are pretty safe because I think I don't think it's going to be a QB battle. I think we're going to be seeing the ball tossed around the field all night. So either Chubb or Harris. Look, James Robinson, I love. I got him really late. He's been impressive so far this year. Travis Etienne has hardly seen the field compared to him, but when you're going up against Chubb or Harris, it's tough for me to say Robinson. Same guy also asked between Debo Samuel, JJ, who I'm trying to figure out right now who that means, and
Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, it must be Justin Jefferson, and then Samuel. Look, I'm not sitting Debo at any point, no matter who the quarterback is. no matter what. So for that, if it's pick one, I'm going Debo. If you're deciding between Debo and Justin Jefferson, why? Who are you starting over? Like, those should be your top two guys.
Realistically, this guy should have Nick Chubb, Najee Harris starting at running backs, Debo Samuel, Justin Jefferson starting at receivers, and then I would start James Robinson as my flex over Curtis Samuel.
There you go. Easy enough. That's kind of why I was having trouble with it too. I'm like, these are 4 out of these 5 guys are must start guys, basically. So, so there you go. Luke took care of that one. All right. Moving on. Trade talk. So we're going to set aside the trade talk just for a second and try and focus more on the start sit stuff, right?
Oh, he meant Damien Harris instead of Najee Harris. I'd still start Damien Harris.
Okay. That can be a little confusing too. If you guys maybe want to throw like a first name letter or something with the multi last name players. Trade talk. All right. So I guess we're talking trades. Zach, again, your area of expertise. He says he wants to know who he could trade for.
Is it this YouTube question?
Yeah, that's a different guy. So let's answer the Johnny guy. So I love it. So much interaction. Can't even keep it straight here. So 10-man full PPR league. Should I trade Lamar, Pittman, Gabe Davis, and Bateman for Christian McCaffrey and St. Brown? I mean, if you don't draft Christian McCaffrey, he's not a player I'm looking to trade for. Yeah. Who knows how many weeks you can get out of him. I'm on Ross St. Brown. I love, but I guess it just depends who you can give up.
As much as I love Cooper Kupp, St. Brown, and Waller as a trio, I don't think I would trade for that over Lamar Jackson, Pittman, and Gabe Davis. Also, Rashad Bateman, and that offense has been a sneaky good pick. I don't think you can outpace your current output. It's a safer just to not trade.
I don't disagree.
I also am not. So in my history of playing fantasy football, I've never been a huge trade guy. I know some people love it. They make, 20 different transactions over the season. I, of course, I scour the waiver wire, but I've never been a huge trade guy in general, especially after 2 weeks. I like to kind of see how things kind of play out with the team that I draft, but I know different people have their different strategies. So Curtis Samuel over Robinson, just to finish up that last question. No. I like Robinson a lot, especially Travis Etienne didn't play football at all last year. He has very limited. I have it actually written down here. He's had very limited touches, 18 touches for just 16 points on the season. I like James Robinson until proven otherwise.
Yep, I agree with you, Jake.
All right, so that wraps up our questions for now. If anybody else watching has any more, definitely toss them in. But let's start breaking down just a couple of different it's a perfect transition, actually. I got some teammates here, or if we're starting one, benching one, trying to decide with the Jacksonville backfield, the New York Jets backfield, and then the Rams backfield. So let's start real quickly with James Robinson over Travis Etienne. It's pretty much Robinson until something changes. Like I said, do you guys think Etienne becomes that guy at any point, like the number one guy at any point this season?
I think Zach's shaking his head. I think I'm with him on that. My only concern, I guess, in this game alone is this could be, like you said, Jake, like the Chargers could absolutely stomp the Jaguars here. And that makes me like Travis Etienne a little bit more than James Robinson. Because it feels like Travis Etienne's the receiving guy. He's got the connection with Lawrence. I think if we see an Etienne game, it might be this week if things get off the rails quickly for Jacksonville. If not, I think it's James Robinson. But I think if they get to the red zone, I think James Robinson's getting the touches.
And Zach, another running back taken in the first round. James Robinson versus Etienne. Is Etienne a guy that you should hold on to? Is he going to be starter quality at any point this season? Or what do you see out of the Jacksonville backfield from a whole season standpoint?
In PPR leagues, it's a no-brainer in PPR that the points come from per reception, right? Travis Etienne is a receiving back. However, James Robinson is still getting the touches on the ground. Mm-hmm. Travis Etienne is going to outpace James Robinson for fantasy. That means that Travis Etienne needs to get more receptions. Is he going to take those receptions away from Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones? I don't think so. James Robinson is going to be the captain of this ship until proven otherwise.
Also, don't look now, but Evan Ingram looks very good.
Yeah, exactly. This Jacksonville offense was made in the offseason to help Trevor Lawrence. I don't think Travis Etienne is going to have a huge plate to feed off of.
It's a miracle once you get out of the Giants out of New York, what kind of production you can put out there. Take a guy like Kenny Galladay. Does he even play football anymore? Who knows?
Yeah, you beat me to it. I was about to say, what happens to Kenny Galladay when he gets out of New York?
We talked about this on the show yesterday, but for anyone listening, Kenny Galladay is droppable.
Oh, very.
Yep.
And then instead of wasting time on it later, since you just said that, Darnell Mooney, drafted relatively high, probably a flex guy, maybe your first wide receiver out. Is he somebody that you can just cut ties with right now? I did in one league. It was either him or Romeo Doubs, and for the duration of the season, I think Doubs ends up with being more effective and has a higher potential later on in the season. Can you cut somebody like Darnell Mooney loose?
I don't think so. I think Darnell, in order for the Bears to win, and the Bears are probably the worst football team in the NFL right now. In order for them to win games or be in it, Darnell Mooney has to be involved in the offense. I don't love Justin Fields' arm. But that's a tough one. In my opinion, that's a tough one because you're not going to start Darnell Mooney any week with confidence. But I don't think I drop him either because he is going to get targets. He has to be involved. He's maybe more of a trade bait. Wait for him to have a good game and then try to trade him away. I know that's taking up a spot on your roster, but I think Darnell Mooney you might have to be a little patient with a new coach and still a young quarterback.
All right, back to the teammate situation here. Zach, will go to you on this one. Michael Carter and Breece Hall. Michael Carter looked pretty good in week one. Breece Hall had a little bit of a showing the second week. They have pretty even touches, 29-20, relatively even fantasy points, 27-23. Kind of the same question as the Jacksonville running backs. Does Breece Hall take over and be the number one guy and get the majority of touches sooner than later?
I think so. I think it's the reverse case in New York. They drafted Breece Hall for a reason. They had Michael Carter for a year, and they did not feel that they were getting enough out of Michael Carter, and they looked in the second round, their first pick in the second round, to get a running back. I think it's Breece Hall. I think he is eventually going to take the keys and get the majority of snaps.
I agree with you guys, but I don't think it's this week. I think
that's a fair assessment.
I think we'll see Breece Hall more when Zach Wilson comes back. But last week, I have it up here. Michael Carter played 43 snaps to Breece Hall's 19 snaps. That's what sets it over the edge for me. If you have both of them and you need to start one of them, Michael Carter is on the field almost more than double what Breece Hall was last week. I don't think that changes considering they won last week. So that makes me like Michael Carter just a little bit more than Breece Hall.
And I don't think that disparity is going to flip on a dime, right?
Agreed.
I think over a couple of weeks, you're going to maybe work in Breece Hall more and more. And then eventually maybe he overtakes, plays more snaps or has the lion's share carries or whatever. But he's also, only going into his third NFL game ever. So you probably trust Michael Carter a little bit more right now to be on the field for a majority of the time. So I think exactly like Luke said, if you're choosing between the two until Breece Hall completely takes over, Michael Carter is probably the guy. And then we'll wrap up this little part here with Darnell Henderson versus Cam Akers. Look, we know that they want to get the ball to Cam Akers. We know that they want to get him involved. Darnell Henderson has played well in the first 2 weeks, especially after, a pretty peak and valley type season last year. When does Cam Akers officially take over as the guy? And how soon are you starting him with confidence? And how soon, I guess I should say, how long are you leaving him on the bench? Because right now, I don't love him taking up a starting spot.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. A little funny story on our ranking show. 2 years ago, Zach drafted Cam Akers and bitched about it. Last year, Trevor drafted Cam Akers and bitched about it. So this year, I drafted Cam Akers and now I'm bitching about it. So you think I would have learned? But I mean, Cam Akers had 15 touches last game, right? Like he should be involved in this offense. I think it's a hot hand approach though. I do think I think Cam Akers should see the initial touches. We didn't see that obviously week 1, but I mean I didn't hate his what he had 15 carries, like 44 yards or something last week. I didn't hate that. Add on another 2 receptions. So I mean, take what you want with Cam Akers, but Jake, I think I'm in the same boat with you. I don't love starting him until I can see a little bit more. My only worry is I don't know if I'm ever going to see anything from the Rams offense this year that makes me signal that yes, Cam Akers is a must start.
In our Flurry Sports Dynasty League, Zach has been trying to get his hands on Trey Lance for a year. You were trying to get Tyreek Hill from me, which I'm so glad I didn't do anything with my roster because last year I won like 3 games. This year I'm just killing everybody, putting up like 200 points. So I'm glad I kept him, but Zach has spent a good part of the last year trying to get Trey Lance for me, and he was trying to, give me some backup guys, role player guys. I was like, I want Cam Akers. I need a starting running back. And he said no, like 3 different ways for Cam Akers. I'm happy that the trade didn't go through. Maybe Zach is too at this point. I'll still take Trey Lance, he says in the comments. And you might still be able to have him.
Zach.
But I wanted Cam Akers. That's who I was targeting, and I'm kind of glad, now it doesn't matter. Trey Lance is hurt anyway, but I don't know. Zach, we'll have to talk off stream here and see if we can figure something out, especially after this injury. Zach says, hi, Luke. So I've got one other thing jotted down that I want to talk about, and then Zach will open the floor to you, whatever you brought. And then we'll end the stream with the Trader Keep segment that I'm going to start doing every couple of weeks this year. So the one last thing I want to talk about, and it's great that we have Luke here. I want to talk about the Packers receiving group as a core. Is there anyone further down, their roster worth stashing? Are you stashing Watson? Are you stashing Dobbs? And then if you got to choose between, are you starting Watkins right now over Lazard? Is there fantasy value moving forward for either one of those guys? Luke, talk to me a little bit about this Packers receiving core.
I don't think there's value at all in the Packers receiving core. I mean, I think that the value comes from Allen Lazard getting a touchdown. That's where the value comes from. I touched on this earlier in the show, but this Packers offense is not what we're used to. We're not seeing 10 to 15 targets funneled to one guy. We're seeing this ball spread around, 3 catches here, 3 catches there, 4 catches here, 20 rushes here, 3 more catches here, 20 more rushes here. Nothing screams, very exciting on this Packers offense. I think what we saw in Chicago, that 24-10 win or whatever they had, I think that's what we see moving forward. I don't know that the Packers ever hit 30 this year, and that makes me want no Packers receivers whatsoever. And that's coming from a Packer fan and someone who hosts a Packer podcast. But, I mean, Allen Lazard's probably the only one that has a little bit of value, right, just for the touchdowns. But outside of 6 points, I mean, what does Allen Lazard bring? 3 catches for 30 yards and a touchdown. I mean, that's probably not startable in any league that any people are in, unless you're in a really deep league.
And that probably bleeds into Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers is towards the bottom of fantasy players through 2 weeks. There's probably much better options out there with, less, names that have way less respect on them. You can go through a list of a lot of guys that probably are a better option, at least right now in the next couple coming weeks, than Aaron Rodgers. And of course, that is all works together with the receiving core. As a non-Packers fan, Zach, as an outsider's perspective, do you like any of these guys? Is Sammy Watkins worth a start? I mean, he looks to be, he's getting balls thrown his way. He had a chunk yardage play on Sunday. What do you make of this Packers receiving core in general?
I agree with Luke's take. However, my opinion on the Packers, and it's somebody that I'm picking up in all of my leagues, is Robert Tonyan. He's coming. He's nursing an injury. They're easing him back into the offense. I think the stat that I saw is that he only played 40% of the snaps over the last 2 weeks, whereas he peaked last season at over 60% of snaps. So there's clearly room for improvement and growth. in his snap count, and I think that Robert Tonyan is going to reap the benefits of having nobody else on the outside. We saw those flashes last year with that connection between Rodgers and Tonyan. I think that's my sleeper in the Packers offense.
Well, the year before that, he had 11 touchdowns, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
touchdowns.
I'm riding high on the Robert Tonyan train.
My only worry with that, Zach, is that I don't necessarily know if Robert Tonyan is going to be that vertical threat, coming off injury, whatever. But also, the Packers love Tyler Davis, the fourth-string tight end, for whatever. He might be the worst football player I've ever seen. And he's really screaming that vertical threat to me in the tight end room right now. Does that change if Robert Tonyan is fully healthy? I sure hope so as a Packer fan. But for fantasy football reasons, I think, Zach, if we're looking at Robert Tonyan, I think I like him more towards the middle to second half of the fantasy football season, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is, to Zach's point, good time to pick him up right now.
Agreed.
Have him on your roster for when he goes off. Honestly, though, Luke, I think the biggest problem with Tonyan, he's got to compete with Mercedes Lewis.
Right. You know too. As soon as they get to the red zone, if Lazard or Aaron Jones is not scoring, Rodgers is looking to Mercedes Lewis. He wants Mercedes Lewis to score.
Oh yeah,
Packer fans want Mercedes Lewis to score. Matt LaFleur wants Mercedes.
In the end zone.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not saying Mercedes Lewis is going to have 11 touchdowns or anything. He'll probably have his season total is probably going to be 3 catches for 3 yards, 3 touchdowns. But I mean, that's a look that Rodgers has in the red zone. Probably not going to throw it there, but that's a look.
That dude is on his 17th year in the NFL. If he plays one more year, he breaks the all-time record for longest career by an NFL tight end. Zach, we're gonna throw it to you after we got one more question here. Johnny 5659 says, "Thanks, guys. Helps a lot. You're welcome. That's what we are here for." Scooby Taylor, do I trade away Eckler and Bateman for Javonte and Sutton? Oh boy, I don't trust Bateman being good every week, and I'm weak at wide receiver. This might be one of the tougher questions we fielded yet tonight. I like Eckler, so I'm not getting rid of him. But the other 3, I don't have a strong opinion on.
Yeah, you don't trade away Austin Eckler.
Yeah, that's clear.
Plus, Rashad Bateman's number 1 when Mark Andrews inevitably goes down this year.
Yeah.
All right, simple enough. And like I said, like I alluded to just a few minutes ago, I don't really care for blowing up the team that you drafted 2 weeks into the season, but that's just me personally.
I also think that Russell Wilson's a shitty quarterback.
He has not looked good. That's a hot
take. Woo!
He has not looked good. All right, my final points, and then Zach, floor is yours. Like I said earlier, if you have Matt Ryan, I think he's I looked on ESPN. I think he's owned in like 80% of leagues or maybe even higher. No. Okay. Wow. Last week he was rostered in like 78% of leagues. This week, 19.7. He got dropped by 40%, 50% of people that had him. And I mentioned this in an article just the other day. You can find it over at fleursports.org. Matt Ryan, outside of one single 28.5-point performance since week 8 last year, I think it's his last 12 football games, he's averaged 9.67 points. 9.67 points over his last 12 games. Get rid of Matt Ryan. He's trash. You don't need him. Drop him if you got him. That's really my only last point. So, Zach, before we get to trade or keep, what did you bring tonight?
I had a question for both of you guys. One, I was wondering why nobody responded to my Matt Ryan trade request, but you just answered that one. And then my second question is sit Kirk Cousins or Carson Wentz?
Oh, boy.
This
week?
Who do the Vikings have this week? Detroit?
Yeah, Detroit.
Yep.
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, gotta be. Especially after a 7-point primetime game. We all know he sucks in primetime, but then he comes back, usually plays pretty well after. He's got Justin Jefferson. I think Dalvin Cook's got to get more heavily involved. He's not huge in the passing game in general, but if he breaks off one little forward pass, shovel pass, whatever, that's obviously positive for Kirk Cousins. And I think Washington might get stomped this week. I'm definitely betting against them in my cover 5 pool.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
it's got to be Kirk Cousins.
yeah. Detroit might have the worst defense in the NFL, so give me Kirk Cousins.
At least they got an offense that they can kind of keep themselves alive this year.
Yeah, maybe that gives a little bit of a shootout.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anything else, Zach?
Oh man, starter sit Dawson Knox, Gerald Everett. I think it's a no-brainer because we discussed this earlier, but just for anybody out there who has Gerald Everett or is debating picking him up, if he hasn't been picked up in your league already.
Well, I mean, look, he's the 4th ranked tight end through 3 weeks against a guy who, has a combined like 9 points, and like I alluded to, he's like a single digit machine. Dawson Knox is. So yeah, it's hard to go away from Everett right now, especially like I said, the defense for Jacksonville played so well last week. Now you got to travel all the way across country, one of the farthest flights in the entire NFL. Yeah, I don't see why you go away from Everett for Dawson Knox right now.
I think I would agree. My only concern for Gerald Everett, though, is I think whoever Gerald Everett owners, they need to watch the injury report because I believe Donald Parham is day-to-day in Los Angeles right now.
All righty. Zach, what else?
I just want to talk about it more, especially going into tonight's game. We both said Chubb over Harris. Who is, or not Chubb over Harris? We said that it's a safe pick either way. But what do you like about each one of them? Either one of them, I should say.
I mean, Nick Chubb is just he's a machine. Like, and you got somebody as talented as Hunt behind him, and he's still always produces, finds the end zone. But I went into this season loving Harris. I thought he was going to be one of the top weapons in the entire NFL.
Me too,
especially fantasy wise. I loved him. I tried to get my hands on him in every single league that I could. He's got to. Both those guys are going to be the go-to guys tonight, right? Like,
you would hope.
I think just based on because we've seen him do it for longer, and he's probably on a team with overall a little bit of a better offense. Even with the quarterback situation right now, I lean Chubb right now. But I think if Kenny Pickett can come in and they kind of change some things up over in Pittsburgh, like I think that Harris can be an extreme weapon. Same with Deontay Johnson and all those guys. I just don't think that anybody is playing at their peak potential with Mitch Trubisky. And that's not even like a Mitch Trubisky hater. It's just like that's what I've seen, through a couple of weeks. So right now I think Chubb is going to slightly outplay Harris, but Harris can also find the end zone a couple times tonight.
I think I agree. I agree with both your points.
All right. Well, that's all from me.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely. Like I said, every week, whatever you want, as much or little as you want to prepare, definitely go ahead and bring it. But that brings us to our last segment. We're going to be doing this every couple of weeks because there's no, you're going to run out of names or you're going to be repeating yourself if you do it every week. But just some quick hitters, trade or keep, So I kind of framed this before we started to Zach as big names that got drafted high that are underperforming that maybe you want to try and just salvage something and get somebody for, or the opposite, like you said earlier, Luke, Antonio Gibson, kind of playing out of his mind right now. Should you trade him right now or should you kind of hold on to him and hope it continues? So these will just be quick hitters, whatever you guys think. But Derrick Henry, obviously drafted very, very high. Through 2 weeks, he's running back 16.7 points on 35 touches and a touchdown. Is that somebody maybe? And again, this is all predicated on the fact that you could get a decent return. Like you're not going to just trade Derrick Henry away for nothing, even though he's underperformed for a couple of weeks. So let's just say all of these trades would happen under the circumstance you get a fair return. Is Derrick Henry somebody you're interested in moving, Zach?
Absolutely. And if you are going to trade him, like you said, in a perfect world, get a good receiver. Go after a team that doesn't have running backs. Exploit that hole on that other team's roster. Get a return at wide receiver.
Luke, any faith in Derrick Henry moving forward as a top running back?
I'm very much on the fence about Derrick Henry because it's very hard to trade Derrick Henry, right? Because we've seen what he's done in the past.
And you took him so high. If you've got Derrick Henry, you took him clearly in the first round as one of the first couple of picks.
Yeah. The thing that scares me is Tennessee is a horrible football team, right? Their offensive line is bad. They don't have any receiving weapons. Like Derrick Henry is their whole offense. And while that might scream, fantasy points, how many games is Tennessee going to win this year? How many games are they going to be up enough where Derrick Henry can just run the clock out? I think we're way beyond the number one seed from last year, the playoff teams from the last couple of years. Like, I think it's getting close to panic time for Derrick Henry. I said on our show last night that I would not trade him for Austin Eckler. I think I stand by that because I want to see what Derrick Henry still has yet. I want to see 1, 2, 3 more games. But I think, if you're a Derrick Henry owner, I think the alarm bells should be starting to sound off in your head right now.
Yeah, I was 1 year early on my Tennessee's going to fall off and be no good, maybe be bottom of the division take. I said that last year. Was 1 year off. I think the departure of A.J. Brown has affected everyone from top to bottom way more than they anticipated. Zeke is another guy that if you took him, he probably, in my leagues at least, he was passed on by a bunch of people. And now all of a sudden it's like, okay, do I take a middle tier running back or a middle tier receiver, or do I take Zeke? And like a lot of guys probably stumbled into Zeke or just took him based off the name, maybe less informed players. Through 2 weeks, he's again being outperformed by Tony Pollard for like the third straight season. He's running back 48, got 11.8 points on 27 touches, 0 touchdowns. He only has 5 total touchdowns since their bye week last season.
Trade.
Yep, I agree.
Trade.
I don't think Ezekiel Elliott has any value if Dak Prescott's not playing either.
No, he definitely there's plenty of weeks that he struggles with Dak, but we've seen it last year when Dak went out with injury as well. It's just, he just plummets. It's like those two play much better as a pair, or at least Ezekiel Elliott leans heavily on Dak for success. And I mean, Tony Pollard's just getting it done. He's been considered the backup, and he's playing behind one of the highest paid running backs in the entire league, and he just continues to outplay him and outperform. So maybe, just maybe, you could cook up some sort of package for Zeke going out, Tony Pollard in return. Obviously, there's got to be some other stuff involved there, but
yeah, I don't love it either with Tyron Smith out too.
Yeah. So Zeke and Derrick Henry, both guys, yeah, maybe you consider trading, but probably Zeke a lot more than Henry. Alvin Kamara, obviously coming off of injury, he's like you said, Luke, he's a guy that could touch the ball 30 plus times. He had 12 touches for 4.6 points in week 1. He's a guy you gotta kind of just hang on to and see what happens, in my opinion, right?
Correct.
Zach, you're the trade guy. Is there anything worth value that you think you could get back for Alvin Kamara, or are you hanging on to him?
I mean, I think I'm hanging on to Alvin Kamara. He gives you that pass catching ability as well as the rushing. I don't know so much about this New Orleans offense. Michael Thomas is clearly going to be the number one receiver returning, but how long can you ride on Michael Thomas? I think Alvin Kamara eventually finds his way back. The only issue with Alvin Kamara is that he's not getting any younger and he's reaching that peak. I don't think you can go wrong by keeping him, at least for this season. I still think this is his last good season.
Yeah, I think out of those three, he's probably the one that, I'd have the hardest time trading. Derrick Henry obviously could pop off at any point as well, but I think the Saints might be a better football team than the Titans this year. So overall, couple more, obviously less big names, drafted quite a bit further down the board. Hunter Renfrow, wide receiver 58, obviously had those 2 massive fumbles. One of them costed the game last week, but he's another guy that signs a big contract. And you would have thought, here comes Davante Adams. That's only good for Hunter Renfrow. It might take, a few targets away from him, but opens things up a ton. And we've seen how talented Renfrow is, but through 2 games, he only has 10 receptions for 80 yards and 2 fumbles. Is there any trade value for a guy like Hunter Renfrow, Zach?
I mean, do you trade him away? Yes. Am I going to trade for him? No.
Sure.
I think I think you're going to be better trying to cut your losses and just cutting him.
Sure.
Yeah, or you wait till he has this big game and then trade him. But who knows when that big game's
well,
gonna come.
and he's a guy too that I'm not prepared to drop Hunter Renfrow by any means. Especially, we already saw it week 1. Adams had 19 targets or something insane. Week 2, he had 2, and he found the end zone, but he had 2 targets. So I think the way that the type of offense they're trying to play, I think Hunter Renfrow will have big weeks. It's just going to be difficult to know which one of those weeks, which week to start and when he's going to go off. By the way, I also forgot to mention Zeke. He's got 2 catches for -7 yards this year. So
trade.
not great. And then the last guy I had jotted down, we talked about him quite a bit earlier on, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is the tight end 35, 7.8 points this season. Now, he's a guy that you probably could end up making a trade for based off his name and based off potential, especially if you're trading with somebody who hasn't looked that deep into, last season, this season, the fact that he's only ever scored 1 touchdown. If you told me, if you asked any random football fan how many touchdowns has Kyle Pitts scored in his career, they're definitely not saying 1. People think he's, a lot better and worth a lot more than he is. But I think Kyle Pitts right now, to me, is a trade. Now you got to get the right package back for him, but I have no problem getting rid of Kyle Pitts right now. Tight end is tough. Tight end's tough because it's not very deep, and you could end up streaming guys and whatever. But if you can get the right package back, there's no reason that I'm holding on to Kyle Pitts.
Let me ask you this, because I just went through this. I tried to trade earlier in the week. I tried to trade DK Metcalf for Kyle Pitts. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? I should tell you my 2 receivers are Devontae Adams and Mike Williams are my 1 and 2 receivers. And I
honestly like that, even though the quarterback situation is what it is up in Seattle. But it's like, if the ball's going anywhere, it's going to DK, and he's such an athletic freak that it doesn't have to be a perfect ball. Like, he's gonna make a play and come down with it, and like, he's so much bigger than a lot of guys. Versus Kyle Pitts is like, he's there, he's available, and they're just not getting him the ball. I mean, 4 targets through 2 weeks is criminal. And then he just cannot find the end zone, can't break the plane. 1 touchdown in 19 games is not good. So, I mean, why not? I'd trade DK Metcalf for Kyle Pitts at this point. Zach, what do you think?
I like DK better than Kyle Pitts. I say hold off on that trade.
That's and Luke, obviously you have, I think we're on complete opposite ends of the spectrum here. And Kyle Pitts has all sorts of real life football potential and talent, but what he's shown as a fantasy tight end, like I said, even last year he ended up as tight end 6, but tight end is not a position group that's that deep. So like, it's not that hard to be a top 10 tight end if you just have a decent year. And he was closer to tight end 13 than he was to tight end 3. So like, he's not one of those top guys right now until he starts finding the end zone.
I agree.
So I guess we will wrap up here. Just a few minutes to go before kickoff. We have one final question from a newbie. Welcome to fantasy football. He says, I'm a first-time player. I'm just learning, but I made 2 trades. I gave Kenyon Drake for James Conner and then Allen Robinson for Sterling Shepard. I like James Conner just because he seems to find the end zone a billion times a season. So I don't mind that trade, but the Robinson Sterling Shepard thing, Sterling Shepard's just a name I've never been interested in having on my fantasy team. He had a couple big games last year when he came back. What do you guys think of these trades for the newbie?
I am a huge fan of that. Sterling Shepard is forgotten in that New York offense, but dear Lord, Kenny Golladay is too. So who gets the ball? Drum roll, please. Sterling Shepard.
Oh, and he said Allen Robinson and Sterling Shepard for DeAndre Hopkins.
Oh, God. Oh.
I don't
James
love that.
Conner is a nice pick, but I don't know if you give up Allen Robinson and Sterling Shepard for James Conner.
I would like, if this guy's really a first-time player, he should become a salesman for selling Kenyon Drake for James Conner, because Kenyon Drake has no business being on an NFL team. But, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, his value comes in the second half of the year, right? Is Arizona going to be in a position where they need to get DeAndre Hopkins the ball? Maybe for the first 3 games when DeAndre Hopkins comes back, But I'm on the boat that Arizona is not a very good football team. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins fits in that offense. I don't think Kyler Murray can get the ball consistently to DeAndre Hopkins. So I'm saying no on the Allen Robinson trade. I'm saying incredible job on the Kenyon Drake for James Conner trade.
Yes, I would agree. And DeAndre Hopkins is another one of those guys that falls in that category. Massive name, huge success, in his early years down in Houston, but then just wasn't quite the guy that I think that everybody thought he would be. Obviously still very serviceable and a big part of that offense, but fantasy-wise, he's not going to go get you 20 every week. He's just not.
Nope.
So, all right. I think that was a great first stream, boys. Luke, thank you for just –
Yeah, I apologize for hijacking your stream here.
No, I put it in the group chat. It's like I said, Coach and Henry are probably not going to be able to do it for the next bunch of weeks. So I'm going to try and do a rotating cast. Zach is always welcome, and Luke, anybody that wants to hop on, I appreciate it. The more the merrier. I think it helps with the conversation, and you get a lot more of both sides of the argument as well. So I appreciate both of you joining. Remember, head on over to prizepicks.com. If you go over to prizepicks.com and you look right on their homepage, they're offering you a deposit match up to $100. If you use the code Flurry instead, FLURRY, you're going to get a deposit match up to $1,000. So we're offering you 10 times the value that the website is itself. Head on over to Prize Picks. Pretty simple to win money. You're picking overs, unders. You're picking people to score touchdowns, all different stuff for football, but then any sport that you can think of as well. So head on over to Prize Picks. Use the code Flurry. Zach, Luke, thank you guys for joining. Thanks everybody that put a question in the chat. Oh, we just got one more final one. We'll hit it real fast. I think it's a pretty easy one anyway. Flex Hunt or Curtis Samuel. Maybe it's not so easy. I would lean Hunt though.
Hunt.
All right, there you go. Unanimous, Hunt. And with that, we will end it. This has been the Fantasy Football Start Sit Show for week 3. It's supposed to be. That's my mistake with the headline there.
I got it.
All right. Thanks, boys. We'll talk to you next week.